All right. Good morning or good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is for you. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Fantasy Football Busters podcast. Really happy to be here today. My name's Eric. That's my co-host Will. Will, how you doing today, man?
Hey man, I'm feeling good, man. I actually got my first real draft a couple days ago, so I'm really excited for this mock draft. It got me back into the mode of really thinking about all this stuff. So, ready to show you guys some different strategies and stuff throughout these mock drafts.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one today. I feel like we've been putting out really informative videos, stuff that's going to help you guys during draft season and beyond. But I think this one might be the most important video that we've done yet. We're going to go round by round. Obviously, you get to see where our head's at while we're making these picks, what we're hoping happens going into the next round, our specific round by round targets and stuff like that. I think this is going to be really, really good video for you guys to watch, especially if you still have drafts coming up this weekend. So I hope that you can benefit from it. Will, are you ready to kick this thing off?
Yeah, man, I'm ready to get going. So, go ahead and swap over right here. We're doing this draft on Sleeper. It's a great website for you to use for your mock drafts. Let you go against computers, other players. They sometimes have a lot of drafts going at once, so you can join those and do those with other people. And it's just a great resource for fantasy football purposes. It's something I started using maybe 2, 3 years ago, and things have gotten a lot better since then. I'm sure Eric can also attest to that.
Yeah, I've been using it a lot over the past couple of years. It's an easy way to get prepared for draft season, even if you don't want to go in with real people, which I do recommend because that gives you
Hmm.
like the most possible outcomes. But they use their own sleeper ADP based off of leagues that have been drafted on their site. So it's fairly realistic ADP that you're drafting against, even if you're just going against AI. So yeah, I think it's a really valuable tool. That's what we're going to be using today. As far as league settings, this is a 12 team league. It's going to be half PPR. We're basing it off of a league that we've both been in for a lot of years now. We have our draft coming up on September 3rd. And so this is a single quarterback league, two running backs, two wide receivers, tight end, flex. We do have kicker defense in that league as well, but we're not going to focus on that in this draft. And we're going to go 12 rounds. So if your leagues are like that, I feel like that's pretty standard. So hopefully that'll benefit the most people seeing this type of draft. But even if you're in a different setting, I think you can still get some takeaways from what we talk about today. So if you want to go ahead, or I guess I'm in control here, aren't I? I can
Yeah,
start us off. And we got Will at the three spot, and I'm at the 1-6. So let's kick it off.
hell yeah.
Start the draft.
All right, so we got Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey going first, first and second, as we pretty much expected them to. So me sitting in this three spot, as we've talked about before in prior episodes, which if you haven't seen, you should probably go and check those out. We have a lot of analysis and a lot more in depth with these players. Today we're looking at it in a more practical sense. I'm at this three spot, and typically when I draft, I have a high spot. I like to go with the running back first, a strong running back, somebody who's going to be consistent throughout the season. This has Derrick Henry listed as consensus three. I kind of agree with that as well. I mean, it's sort of a toss up between these three because we had them all sort of tiered together with Dalvin Cook, Austin Eckler, and Derrick Henry. I could go Dalvin Cook. That would be more true to real life than for me, at least. I'm a big fan of Dalvin Cook myself, and he's kind of one of my guys. But in this instance, I'm going to go with the smartest pick here, which is probably going to be number three, Derrick Henry. I'm going to take him at this spot.
All right. So we'll start off with a running back. I think this is realistic to what I would actually do in a real draft as well, even with Dalvin Cook still available. I'm definitely tempted there, but for for you guys, I think it would be really useful to see one of us start off with a running back and one of us start off with a receiver. So I'm going to go Justin Jefferson here. Cooper Cup's already off the board, so it makes that wide receiver decision a lot easier.
Hmm.
But as we talked about in our wide receiver rankings video, I would probably go Jets anyway. He's my number one ranked. So I'm going to take Justin Jefferson here. And then on the way back, I'm crossing my fingers and I'm really hoping that one of DeAndre Swift or Saquon Barkley makes it back to me. That's kind of the dream. It's probably unlikely. It's probably more likely that like a Leonard Fournette or maybe an Alvin Kamara gets back to the 2-7, but we will see. So I take Justin Jefferson.
Hmm.
Cook, Harris, Swift, Chase, Kelsey, Diggs round out the first round. And Barkley gets taken one pick before me, but that's all right. So let's see what I'm left with here at running back. I would like to target a running back after starting with Justin Jefferson at the top. Leonard Fournette did make it back to me. Interesting case to be made between him and Javonte Williams here. Javonte does have really high upside if he's given the keys to this running back position. But I think that he's probably still in a decent committee there with Melvin Gordon. Leonard Fournette's just going to get a ton of opportunities, especially in the passing game. And with an offense as potent as Tampa Bay is going to be, he's going to get a lot of scoring opportunities. So I think I'm going to take Leonard Fournette here.
It's a good pickup. All right, so Javonte Williams and Tyreek Hill both went fifth and fourth, respectfully. So I'm looking at this spot. Usually, I like to go with two running backs. Oh, I guess this is what wide receiver 0 in this instance in terms of the strategy. I don't punt the wide receiver position. I just believe that once you get past that sort of elite level of wide receivers with the Cooper Kupps and the Justin Jeffersons, there's not too much of a difference until you start working your way down those tiers, which we haven't really started working our way too much into that second tier of wide receivers yet. It's not too deep into it. Whereas I still do have a higher tier option in Ezekiel Elliott, just based on his productivity and based on volume. But the other interesting player we have here is Mark Andrews in the second, which is a big positional advantage at tight end. And since I'm on the swing right here, it would make more sense for me to take that higher pick who I think is going to be gone sooner. So I'm going to go with Mark Andrews here, and I'm going to hope that Zeke is still available on the turn, which he is right here. So I'm going to go with Zeke.
Totally agree with your strategy there. I thought that was really well thought out. Mark Andrews giving you that huge positional advantage at tight end. I was in a really similar boat with my thought process here. I was hoping that either one of the Ezekiel Elliott's or James Connors at running back made it back to me here, or that Kyle Pitts would make it back to me, and I could have a similar positional advantage. Kyle Pitts did make it back. Zeke and Connor both went, and so I think that makes my decision pretty easy. I could look at receiver here because I do really like, Michael Pittman, Mike Williams, DJ Moore, guys in that range. But one, I think at least a couple of those guys are going to fall to my next pick, which is what I'm kind of hoping on around the turn here. But I'm definitely not looking at quarterback this early, and because Connor is gone, that kind of ends a tier of running backs for me. So I will go ahead and take Kyle Pitts. We'll see who comes back.
It's a great pickup.
Thank you.
That's why we're always saying, it's always good to do these mock drafts, because even with this one, this is shaping out completely different from the draft that I actually did. So it's good to always get different looks at how these things can unfold. And back to Eric.
Yeah, so we had a string of quarterbacks go here. I'm not sure. It's going to depend on your league mates and just, the type of people that you have in your drafts. I'm not sure how realistic all three of these guys going in the third round is going to be. But this isn't too far from the tier that they would go in, so that makes sense. I was hoping for one of these receivers to make it back to me. Let's see. Mike Williams is still there, and he is who I would have had highest ranked anyway, so I'm happy he's still there. But guys like Michael Pittman, Cortland Sutton, DJ Moore, all guys that I would have been considering went 1, 2, 3 right before my pick. So I'm happy with Mike Williams, and we'll toss it to Will back at the 3 spot.
All right. So I'm at this 3 spot. I've got 2 strong running backs. I got a very strong tight end. I have no wide receivers yet, so it makes sense for me to go wide receiver next. So out of, I guess, who's listed as these top options, we got Deontay Johnson, who recently got injured, but Mike Tomlin's saying it's not serious, so it's not something I'm really considering too much. We got Jalen Waddle, who has Tua at quarterback, and I don't like that all too much. And we got DK Metcalf, who has Geno Smith and Drew Lock at quarterback. So, a little bit of a tougher situation here in terms of, I guess, who I want to pick up. I do have this turn this spot on the turn, so I guess it would make sense to go with the highest value here with Deontay Johnson, see what it rolls back to when it gets back to me. I'm hoping that some of these other options may be gone. I may even go quarterback if Lamar Jackson's still there, because I think Lamar Jackson in the 5th round is a pretty good value. So I'm going to go Deontay Johnson here with this first pick because I do need a wide receiver. He is somebody who's known to get a good amount of volume in the Steelers offense, even though we don't quite know how it's going to shape out. But again, like I've said before, we're sort of in that tier of wide receiver where they should just about do very similar things to each other. Someone's going to outperform somebody. That's just fantasy. But from here, Deontay Johnson's probably the smartest pick for me. Lamar went on the turn, of course. So now it's back to me. So taking a look at these options, I could go with another running back in Antonio Gibson. I'm not too sure about that, honestly. I've got 2 strong running back options. I'm actually going to take a bit of a reach. It's a bit of a reach. But I'm going to go with Allen Robinson. I just trust the talent in the offense more so than I trust Jerry Jeudy or DK Metcalf in their situations. But me personally, I like Allen Robinson in that spot. And I'm going to turn it back over to Eric before I talk too much into his timer.
No, you're good. I can also just pause it if we need to. I'm sure that's going to come into play here soon. No, I like that pick a lot. I don't think that Allen Robinson is even really a reach there. Even if his ADP is a little bit lower than that, I think that that's a pretty good value to get him in the 5th round. Here, I've done a lot of these drafts on Sleeper, and Marquise Brown makes it to me in the 5th round every single time, and I draft him just about every single time. Some people might be wondering, I still have my RB2 slot left to fill. Why aren't you taking an RB2? I just don't like this range. AJ Dillon is somebody that I would consider because I do think he has really high upside in the case that Aaron Jones goes down, but I don't want to bet on that. He does have standalone value, but I don't know that his standalone value is enough to warrant a 5th-round pick. I wouldn't fault you for going that here. It's definitely something that I considered, but I still have a flex spot to fill, and that's just as much of an important starting spot. I'm just trying to put up the most points, and I really like Marquise Brown this year. So I'm going to go ahead and do what I've done plenty of times in the past. And then on the way back, I'm hoping that Jalen Hurts makes it to me at the 6-7. I've been preaching a ton for Trey Lance so far throughout these videos in this offseason. I still really like Trey Lance as a value when we get to like the 8th round or so. But with this news about Jimmy Garoppolo coming back and what I saw from that team, not just from him, but from that offensive line as well, in that last preseason game, I'm slightly more nervous. I still like him, but I'd prioritize Jalen Hurts earlier. So my timer's about to run out. I'll take Marquise Brown, and we'll see what comes back.
AJ Dillon off the board. There goes Jalen Hurts.
There goes Hurts. Yeah.
That hurts.
So that does hurt. So Schultz, Gibson, Judy, Mitchell, Dillon, and Hurts round out the 5th round. Brandon Cooks, Chris Godwin, another guy that I am starting to move up my board a little bit, goes at 6-2. Adam Thielen, Joe Burrow, Amari Cooper, Damian Harris. I'm back up on the board. So I feel like it's still a little too early for me to take Russell Wilson. I think he's a good pick. I don't know that I want to use a 6th rounder on him. If he falls to the 7th, I'll probably take him pretty easily. But I'm pretty confident that Trey Lance is going to make it to the 8th, and I don't mind snatching him up when we get there. So I'm going to prioritize other positions here. I still really don't like the running backs that are going in the zone. Like the list right now is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Miles Sanders, Kareem Hunt, Cordell Patterson. I don't like that. Chase Edmonds is a guy that, I just said it out loud, but I'm hoping might come back to me if Will doesn't snipe him from me. We'll see. But I think I'm going to take another wide receiver, forego my RP2 slot for now, and just solidify my wide receivers, make sure I have 3 really, really high-end starters to start the season. There's some good options to choose from. Michael Thomas, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Juju, and Gabe Davis are the guys that I'm looking at. You can make a good argument for a lot of them. Juju has been dealing with a little bit of a knee issue. Michael Thomas is also dealing with a hamstring, and we just haven't seen him on the field for 2 years. Not that I think he's a bad pick. I just am a little bit worried. Amon-Ra is the guy I'm going to go with. I think he's really solid and just had a crazy ending stretch to the end of last season. So I'm going to take Amon-Ra St. Brown.
That's a great pickup because I was thinking about him for a second. Yeah, there's no way I'm ever drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire again in a draft ever again. It's just so weird that Kansas City wants to hand him the keys so much, but like he doesn't ever really take them. I'm sort of mirroring the same sort of sentiment that Eric is in terms of I want to get my skill positions kind of early. I want to sort of fill out that flex spot, find somebody that's going to be a decent fill-in for that. I've got two running backs, two wide receivers. I typically like to go with a running back in my flex if I can help it, but I'm not afraid of the wide receiver spot either. I think the biggest issue with that is me thinking I like running backs and flexes because we used to do standard for this league. But this is the first year that we're actually doing half PPR, which means it makes more sense for me to go wide receiver in that spot as well. So I'm actually going to take Juju here. It's about that time that I start looking into the quarterback position as well. And I know Eric had mentioned them earlier. I don't want this to seem like I'm sniping them, but at the same time,
All good.
yeah, Russ kind of fell to me in this spot. I have him in the other league that I drafted as well. I drafted him around this spot too. So I'm going to go Russell Wilson here and try to fill out that QB position. It's just a quarterback on an elite offense, hopefully elite offense.
I think your team is shaping up really nicely. Like I said, if Russell Wilson had fallen to me in the seventh, I probably would have taken him. But it makes my decision a lot easier here. I do still have that available RB2 slot. I really, really like Chase Edmonds this year. We just got news that Sony Michel got released
Mm-hmm.
by the Dolphins. I honestly don't think that that should be moving Chase Edmonds up people's boards. I think he was already high enough. He had the RB1 slot locked up. Sony Michel wasn't taking any passing work from him. I don't think this affects his role. If anything, I think it makes Raheem Mostert more interesting at the end of drafts. But no need to get into all that. I think Chase Edmonds is a smash pick here in the seventh round. I definitely don't want to try to test it and see if he comes back to me. So I will take Chase Edmonds, and hopefully Trey Lance doesn't get sniped around the turn here.
Yeah. Well, it's always good to be sort of literate with who all these players are, so that way you're not freaking out when it gets to your pick and someone that you like got taken.
So Devontae Smith, Dak Prescott, Rashad Bateman, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders, Hopkins round out the seventh round. Kenneth Walker, Kareem Hunt, Elijah Moore, Singletary, London, and Lazard. And now I'm back up on the board. Like I said, Trey Lance is still there. I'm going to take him. I think he's got crazy high upside. Even if he's not that good as a passer, I think his rushing floor is going to be huge. People got a little bit scared about that third preseason game, myself included, but not necessarily because of the performance of Trey Lance, but because of how bad the offensive line looked. That's what scared me. Kyle Shanahan and even some of the players came out and said that that was a really vanilla game plan that they went out there with in that third preseason game against the Texans. They're going to use Trey Lance in a rushing role way more than they showcased in that game. So I expect a floor of probably, I don't know, 750, 800 rushing yards at least. And that's going to be enough to boost him at a minimum into probably the top 8 quarterbacks. So I'm really happy with him here, and I will take Trey Lance.
Good pickup. Good pickup. Rashad Penny goes right before, which is okay. I was planning on. So now we're sort of into that part of the draft where we're sort of drafting for depth to try to get more players who we think may hit later on, maybe good fill ins. And I'm actually going to go with the more, not really interesting pick. He's kind of where he's getting drafted around now, sort of because his hype is built up to this point. I'm going to go Dameon Pierce. I feel like he's going to be a good running back to have on the bench, just to kind of keep an eye on to see how he's going to perform because he may be able to fill in that flex spot for me as well. I was hoping Brandon Ayuk would come back to me on the turn. He is somebody I'm high on this year, but not necessarily somebody I need on the squad. So just taking a look at some of these options that we've got here, we've got Zach Ertz up at the top. I could go Zach Ertz, get a backup tight end, but because I do have Mark Andrews, he's not someone who's going to play week to week for me, honestly. He would be on the bench except for my bye week, and that's sort of a waste of a pick. So I'm sort of looking for more of a boom or bust type of player to keep an eye on. So I'm actually going to take 2 running backs in this position, and I'm going to go James Cook. He's a rookie that I'm sort of higher on. He's in an elite offense. He's just somebody he's mostly going to be on the bench, but I'm going to keep an eye on the situation just to see how he develops because there have been reports saying he could usurp Devin Singletary at some point in the season, possibly. It's a possibility. But Just what I'm thinking in that spot.
I dig it. I'm actually going to pause the draft here because I think your selection is one that I agree with. I
Hmm.
can't I scroll back down. There we go. Your selection of Damian Pierce in the eighth. If I had gotten Jalen Hurts in the sixth, he's pretty much always my eighth round target. I really like getting him there. Um, but I thought it was interesting. You went with Damian Pierce over Ramandre Stevenson. I do think I would do the same thing. They did go back to back at the 8-10 and 8-11. What are your thoughts between those two guys?
So Ramondre Stevenson's somebody who has a lot of potential to me as well. I like Damian Pierce just because he looks like he appears to be in more of that clear RB1 role for the Texans, even though it is the Texans at the end of the day. But he is in a clear RB1 role. Ramondre Stevenson's sort of in a spot right now where he's splitting with Damian Harris, but he is going to get more of that receiving work now that James White is gone. So it was just sort of a toss up to who I think could have more of a potential from a season long aspect. So I went with Damian Pierce, whereas I fear Ramondre Stevenson's going to be a lot better towards the tail end of the season. So I guess it was more of a start strong perspective than an end strong perspective. At least that's how
Like
I
that.
sort of broke that down when I was picking.
I think the majority of the time I'm making the same decision. I think they're really close to me as well. Like you said, Damian Pierce seems to have that RB1 role locked up in Houston. I do think that Davis Mills and, of course, now I'm going to forget his name, their offensive coordinator that was the QB's coach. I'm blanking on his name. I'll look it up.
Okay.
But the pairing of those two is really underrated this year. I think their offense is actually going to be better than a lot of people think. And so even if Rex Burkhead starts to kind of eat into his passing down role, I think that early down role might be more valuable than people give it credit for. Texans offensive coordinator. Pep Hamilton. That's who it is. So he used to be the QB's coach for Andrew Luck. He used to be the QB's coach for Justin Herbert, and then he came in here was the QB's coach and now got promoted to offensive coordinator. I just think he brings a lot of upside and continuity with Davis Mills to this offense. Ramondre, you could argue, has more of a passing down role now that Ty Montgomery got hurt and that James White has retired. So I think there's upside with both. I just thought that was an interesting discussion to have. So we'll get back to the draft. I'll resume this. So I'm sitting here in the ninth round. Um, this one has probably been the hardest decision for me in the ninth round on these sleeper drafts every single time because most of the time both of these players are available, and I just really like the value of both of them here. One of them being Christian Kirk,
Mm-hmm.
the clear wide receiver one for the Jaguars in a Doug Peterson offense that I think is going to be much improved this year. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to look a lot better. Um, I don't think that the options outside of Kirk are too inspiring, other than in the backfield with Travis Etienne. But at the wide receiver position and at the tight end position, I think he's by far and away the number one. He showed in their last preseason game with a ridiculous, I think, like 36 or 38% target share
Mm-hmm.
in the time that he was on the field. That he's absolutely gonna dominate the target share there. Um, but because I went RB light, I only have Leonard Fournette and Chase Edmonds on my team. I really would like to get another running back. I don't want to force it, but I love Darrell Henderson here. With Cam Akers still injured, still dealing with a soft tissue injury, and coming back off of the Achilles injury, I think Darrell Henderson is going to get a lot more work than people might realize, especially to start the season. So I'm going to take him, and he's going to be, my insurance policy behind Chase Edmonds.
I think that's a good shout. I think Christian Kirk going in the ninth round is even better now too. Now that Laviska Shenault has been shipped out as well. Even though Laviska
Dude,
Shenault wasn't really going to take too much volume to begin with, just sort of makes it more of a
Visca's
sure pick, I guess.
Visca's a nothing, dude. I wish that Visca was good, and I hope good things for him in Carolina. But man, he's like statistically and like from an analytics perspective, one of the worst wide receivers in the league the past 2 years.
Shit.
Like he's just looked so bad from a usage point, from a production standpoint. If you ask the film guys to look at him, he looks slow and sluggish in and out of his routes and stuff like that. Like, yeah, he has yak potential, but if he can't separate or earn targets, like I don't know.
No, I definitely
I don't know
agree.
if it matters.
I've always wondered why he's been thought of as the guy for so long, but
Yeah.
again, don't want to eat too much into your timer.
No, we're chilling. So I have my tight end one in Kyle Pitts. I have my quarterback one in Trey Lance. I don't need to worry about the onesie positions anymore. I'm really just going to be focused on running back and wide receiver to fill out my last three picks in this draft. I want to go with high upside guys. I'm not looking for guys at this point that are going to be safe or like weekly starters. I have all those positions filled. I'm not too worried about that. I'm looking for guys that can really pop. So I'm looking at the running back position. Michael Carter is still there, and they're saying that he's still the wide receiver or the running back one. I think he's going to get usurped pretty early on in the season by Brees Hall. Alexander Madison is here. He's been shopped in trade talks. Naheem Hines is actually a guy that I think is going to outperform his ADP by quite a bit.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm going to go with somebody that I think could really break out this year in George Pickens
Hmm.
at the wide receiver position. Um, I'm gonna snag him before my timer runs out. But dude, I there's a chance that he's the wide receiver one in Pittsburgh. I'm not saying that that's the most likely. Deontay Johnson is still a fantastic receiver, but they've shown that they don't really trust Claypool in that role. They're moving him to the slot, which I actually think makes him a decent fantasy option as well. Just that big slot role is going to be really valuable to that team.
Hmm.
But man, Pickens could explode this year.
No, there absolutely is that opportunity there. So I find myself in an interesting spot here. I've only got two wide receivers, so I want to go for wide receiver depth, but at the same time, the people who are available to me right now aren't super compelling. So there's like a MVS, there's Tyler Boyd, who's never really proven to do anything. There's the ghost of Julio Jones, Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup's an interesting pick, but I won't have him be able to use him until like week 6, which I could possibly wait. I could have some time, but it's just.
Reports are saying he might be back earlier than that. I don't know that I trust it or that I trust that he'll be himself earlier than, like you said, week 6, but
Mhm.
it's been positive out of camp for him.
So I guess, sort of with that being said, I'm kind of forced into a spot where I need to pick up another wide receiver, but it has to be someone I'm comfortable with on my team that I feel like is going to be productive. And out of everybody in these top, spots at wide receiver, Michael Gallup is the one I feel like is going to come back and be productive, be one of the guys in this offense. So I am going to go Michael Gallup. I know we've talked, don't chase injuries, don't find injuries, they'll find you. But this is also the 10th round, so that isn't really as much of a factor as well.
Totally agree there.
And now after the turn, I've got three wide receivers now. Isaiah Spiller, MVS, Madison, and Gesicki all went. So here I'm sort of looking for, just more depth. So I am going to go with the tight end that I feel would be good on that bye week that'll fill in that spot with Cole Kmet. I feel like he will be a solid fill in. Maybe even somebody who could perform way above his ADP. It's just people don't value him as much because he's on the Bears and he didn't have a lot of touchdowns last year, but that should change going into this year.
Yeah, I like that pickup a lot. I don't. I typically don't take two tight ends, but I think a shout
Mm-hmm.
out for him was definitely necessary. He's a guy that I definitely target later in drafts. If I miss on a Mark Andrews or a Kyle Pitts early, and I don't get like a mid-round Dallas Goddard, he's typically who I'm going after in the late rounds to try to shore up that tight end position.
Mm-hmm.
So I mentioned that I kind of liked Naheem Hines. He got taken 2 spots before me. Julio Jones also goes off the board. Potentially a high upside pick. Who really knows? But I'd like to get another running back here, and I do have Leonard Fournette as my number one running back. So I think I'm going to take Rashad White. He's a really talented prospect coming out of Arizona State. He's now the backup behind Leonard Fournette. He's got a ton of pass catching ability, which I'm hoping for Leonard Fournette's sake, who I drafted, that he doesn't cut into Leonard Fournette's workload. But in the case that he goes down with injury, I think Rashad White could fill in and be pretty high upside. So I'm going to take him here in the 11th.
I like that pickup.
And we're getting into our last round. Man, Kirk Cousins at the 11-10 is such a value. I just end up taking mobile quarterbacks, rushing quarterbacks more often. But if you want to punt quarterback and take Kirk Cousins in the 11th, I think that that's just
That's an
a
amazing value.
fantastic pick. Yeah, couldn't agree more. David Njoku also going in the 12th. I think he's got a lot of upside. Like we talked about before, Jacoby Brissett loves to target the tight end position. He just got the bag this offseason. He's super athletic. He hasn't really broken out so far in his career, but tight ends can be late breakouts. I think he's worth a shot this late. But I'm sitting here at the 12-7. My roster's pretty balanced. I don't feel forced into taking any one position. I think I can just take the best available left on the board. Um, Wide receiver, we got guys like Rondell Moore, who Cliff Kingsbury is talking up, saying he could have a bigger role. I'm not entirely sure that I buy it. DJ Chark, potentially a decent option. People forget that he was actually pretty good in Jacksonville before the shit show that was Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
Jalen Tolbert, reports haven't been as glowing about him recently. They're saying he might not actually be the wide receiver 2 in 2 wide receiver sets. It might be Noah Brown. So that scares me a little bit. I do like Isaiah McKenzie a lot, the potential starting slot wide receiver for the Bills. But a guy that I mentioned way earlier on in the show when I drafted Chase Edmonds is Raheem Mostert. I think, he can never stay healthy, but when he's on the field, he makes things happen. He's a big play waiting to happen. And he's got the familiarity with the similar offense with Mike McDaniel coming over. So I'm going to take him as my last pick.
I like that pickup as well. And to sort of round out my team, I'm actually going to go with another wide receiver just to build that depth. This is somebody who got a ton of buzz actually in training camp, who recently got injured, and people have sort of let him hit the back burner. But reports have been saying, and I believe Todd Bowles even came out and said the other day, he's sort of day to day, and they want him to be ready for the season opener. They're not sure if he's going to be yet, but that is just a good sign that he is progressing well. He may make it at least to full strength by like week 3 or week 4. And that's going to be Russell Gage. I feel like Russell Gage in the 12th round is a great value, just in terms of how this team is probably going to end up using him, especially since it's going to take a little bit before Chris Godwin gets back into the rotation and he's back up to full strength. So that's just another sort of earlier in the season, hopefully something happens type of pick. But like we said before, it's the 12th round, so it's not like I'm not looking to draft somebody who is going to carry my team in the 12th round. I'm looking for someone who's possibly going to have that, who's going to outperform that 12th round pick. So I feel like Russell Gage is going to do that. And just so you guys can see, this is the full draft here. As you see, Eric in the 6 slot, me over in the 3, so you can take a look at our teams and sort of compare and contrast.
Yeah, give us a grade. Tell us who you think did better. Tell us what you think about the running back early or the wide receiver early. We kind of took different approaches to this draft. Wanted to give you guys some different perspectives, but I think this is also pretty realistic for the way that I'm going to approach it. I assume the same for you too, Will. So yeah, give us your opinions on our teams. Who you think did better? If you guys have drafted already, send your teams. Put them in the comments. We'll grade them for you. We can talk to you about them. We'd love to chat it up about that stuff. And yeah, we got some more exciting videos coming out soon. I hope you enjoyed this one. Will, you got anything else left to say to the people?
Nah, man, just if you're doing your drafts, a lot of drafts should be coming up now, so I just wish you all the best of luck in your drafts. Yeah, hit us up down in the comments. Let us know who you have. If you're not feeling confident about your team, if you are feeling confident about your team, if you want us to rate them, grade them, all sorts of stuff. We'll even be posting ours. That way you guys can see the stuff that we're doing as well. And yeah, we've got our draft coming up this weekend, and we're actually going to be doing an in-person podcast this weekend as well. So that's something to look forward to. I'm going to actually get to see my boy Eric in person again.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. So with that being said, leave a comment, subscribe, watch some of the other videos if you want to get more of an in-depth breakdown as to who we think these players are and how they're going to perform. We got full rankings. We should be updating those soon in the coming weeks. It's just football is right around the corner, and it just feels so good. So if you're excited, just as excited as we are, be a part of the community, and we hope to talk a lot more football with y'all.
For sure. Yeah, so that'll wrap it up for us. Join us again. We got a couple more episodes coming out this week, and yeah, we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.